with regard to autism, people that are playing NFL, for example, don't or generally don't have an autistic tendency. But the reality is the spectrum, if you take autism, for example, is very, very wide. So if we look at dyslexia and then ADD, those two things and other things are on a spectrum as well, including that of autism. So if you think of a big circle, they're all in that circle. And that circle is really a neurology, right? So anything that our brain allows us to be in any way slightly different than another person. So they're just labels, the same way as label of a friend's name or label of a person's ethnicity or where they're from. They're just labels at the end of the day. But having said that, if, for example, a person has longer legs than another person or is taller than a person, they are obviously anatomical differences that are going to make you more athletic in general. And the same goes for the likes of dyslexia or the likes of ADD. So what is it, dyslexia? First of all, dyslexia is generally to do with words on a page and how you actually read them. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G might present to another person when they see it on the page as just the B's and the D's are mixed up, for example. That's simply put. Often, very simply put, again, the words or the letters are bouncing off the page and they're doing it in a different kind of rhythmic matter or way than other letters. They're crisscrossing over and they appear different sizes, different shapes, different text. Think of all the text that you see maybe on your mobile device or on Microsoft Word or any of those things, all the different font sizes. It comes across like all the different letters and words of different fonts and so on, different colors. And these, are perceived in a way that are just extremely kind of just overbearing. If we think of, say, for example, if we were in a 3D cinema and we didn't have the glasses on and we're looking at the screen and everyone else around us has the glasses on, they can perceive what's happening. You can hear the ooh and ah when maybe a car chase is happening and the car just slides by the wall and just misses the person or something like that. They're going to ooh and ah because they're shocked by it, they're entertained by it. They can actually feel it in their body, they'll pull back. And that's a similar way, obviously, if you're perceiving things when you're in a game, because people are coming at you, obviously, especially in football. So if you're snapping it and you feel that they're, whatever, a couple of feet away, that split second that when you snap and then they come at you, it's going to be perceived differently. So that space and time continuum, going back to the likes of the language of Back to the Future. And it's very, very true. So it's how you perceive things. So if we go to ADD for a second, it's attention deficit disorder. And if we just keep with that space continuum, time continuum, it's like I perceive what is being said by the teacher or by the coach in this split second, and it goes and it registered with my brain right now. But the person who has ADD, it registers with them a little bit differently. It might be a split second later. So if we speak really fast to somebody who has ADD like this, and we say, hey, go get the ball, get your cleats, put them on, hurry up, you're in the game, things like that, you might think you're putting a sense of urgency to them, but if they have that slight little difference in their brain, they might just hear cleats before they actually hear, come on, you're in the game. And they might just really dumb.
So it basically, it would be it has to be the coach's responsibility to be able to figure out which athletes have different issues, quote unquote issues. Like if Ben Anderson's got ADHD, I got to understand that I can't rattle him off 37 directions in a row because he heard some guy selling nachos in the thing. He's not going to hear 75 different tasks in a row. He won't. So I've got to be able to say, like, follow through, follow through, follow through, follow through. And just so it just embedded into his brain.
Well, yes and no. I mean, yeah, you can be very simplistic that way and just like say, get a catchphrase like follow through. If that's the most important, we'll say buzzwords that you want him to do, rather than giving him a big spiel, a big, paragraph of language. But you must remember too, the thing about, say, for example, dyslexia, obviously you're not reading something in general. You're just going out, you get your cleats, you're on the sideline and off you go. Suddenly you see everything and you just perceive what you see and you perceive as you hear and so on. But with that said, the ADD and the dyslexia, we're just taking these two for example, but I brought in autism there. They're all in this one circle. They're all in one sphere. And the reason being is that I've read books, and you know, when you have one on dyslexia, as I said, you could have a fantastic person who would have studied dyslexia to a very high level, but also may have been dyslexic, and then knows exactly everything inside out about dyslexia. Then you might read one on autism or ADD, and it's obviously an expert in that field, and they're brilliant books. But when you go and you experience it, you can actually very much see it, that all these things actually mesh together. So there's slight moments where the person might appear to have ADD or ADHD, and then they might appear to have actually dyslexia as well. So quite often there's tests obviously for these things, and people mightn't actually hit the range where they're, you know, considered ADD with that label, and they don't get, for example, medication, or the same thing with dyslexia, or get resources in a school, for example, because they meet the requirements of getting into that particular grade. But they might be very close on the level, might be a couple of points or percentages away from having ADD or having dyslexia. So there's a crossover. I often, and most times, always found that there's a crossover there. So you're going back to, again, what you're saying, that really good technique there. Yes, for sure, simple language, for sure, pick out and really think about it. So if you're a coach going to a game and you're thinking, right, there's 5 things I want to get across here, you've got to think, well, how long am I going to speak for? If I'm going to pick out that particular guy, I'm not too sure if he's ADD or dyslexia, it's something going on there. Well, I've only got a split second, but you also have to consider, instead of giving him the big rap sheet of everything, you have to consider just the pinpoint things, the stable things that he really needs, but also you have to consider his environment, where he is. If he is ADD or ADHD, by the way, ADD is attention deficit disorder. ADHD is attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. So something like football can be really good for somebody like that because they're active. So in many ways, the ADHD or ADD, the attention deficit part, it's fueled by the hyperactivity being actually drained or strained off. Go ahead.
Okay, I got a question here. Being a parent, so if, say, Froelich is my kid, and I know him better than any person on the planet. Okay, I've caught a billion snaps from him. I know what this kid deals with. I know everything about him. I obviously know how to handle him a little bit more. And say I know that he has ADHD or ADD, or just he's a slow learner, he's a visual learner, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Would it be a wise move as a parent to go speak to the coach and just say, hey, by the way, my kid's a super visual learner, or he's got an ADHD. So if you tell him 4 things, this dude's picking up maybe 1. I mean, because as a long-standing coach, was a coach, I would love that. Sometimes if a parent just comes up to me and says, you know, this kid really likes things written down. He's a visual guy. Me, I like anything. You like Star Wars, let me know so I can tell you how Boba Fett snaps a damn ball. I don't care. You know, whatever, things like that. So that was my question.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, personally, absolutely. But then I suppose you're looking into a totally different area, which is, you know, the coach's relationships with particular parents and so on. But I absolutely, I mean, personally, I'd be like you, Chris. I'd be like, hey, I want the parent to come to me and say to me, I'd like to know if that, you know, my youngster has this, you know, maybe they're not, you know, diagnosed with ADHD or ADD or dyslexia, which, by the way, you know, it doesn't matter. You don't see people that have ADHD. They don't look any different. People with dyslexia, they don't look any different. We all, to a certain extent, the more you work in this field and the more you actually see it, the more annoyed you get with yourself, because you start picking out things. So, for example, for me, I started picking out things at the start where when I was going for a doorknob and putting my hand on the door, I always, for some reason, seemed to look at one particular screw on the door. So this, again, if you look at OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and a lot of athletes at the higher level would have this. And this is going back to what we were saying last week. And remember, all the time, to simplify all this, just remember a crossover, because the brain is working at a hyper speed, as we all know. If you say something, a person reacts, especially in sport. If you do get that word there, one word, like change, for example, is a good word. And if they change position, they rapidly. So you respond really, really quickly to the momentary thing you're given. But remember, everybody will respond possibly differently if they are processing it differently up there. So again, going back to your earlier question, absolutely. If somebody can give, the more information out there, the better. But again, you as a coach have to understand that. Now that's
The OCD
that's complex.
the OCD thing really just struck me. I just wrote that down
Yeah.
because I've seen all these kids that are on here that I've seen snap. I can tell you exactly, I could watch them from a mile away, and if I can see their characteristics, I can tell you who it is just by the way they grab the ball, because they either, most of them will step left foot, then right foot, then put their hand on the ball, and they do this or do that. So I say superstitious, you say OCD. Is that okay? Like, I mean, should we slap you around because you're looking at a screw in the door handle? Or is it like, you're looking at a screw in the door handle? I mean, is that bad?
Well, I mean, it's just, you often hear this word awareness. It's been bandied about a lot in the last, few years. I think it came up briefly last week. I think Samantha here does yoga, for example. So awareness is huge. And like even momentarily there, if we asked Samantha, you do yoga, right? Yeah. So I do yoga as well. I've done yoga for years and years. And anybody who goes to yoga, for example, especially in America or in Ireland or in, lots of European nations, a lot of Western, very generally very richer nations in the world, that we've been sold yoga in the physical movement, like the exercise movement, but there's millions of other different types of yoga. There's many different types of yoga sport. But when you go in, for example, for a physical yoga class where you want to tone up or lose weight or that kind of thing, yes, you will get all those things, but something will shift up here as well. And that is generally what it is awareness. So you will actually come back and start feeling as if I feel really, I have clarity here. And even if you're not a person who feels, we mentioned nervousness before, or a person that feels anxious or things like that, even if you're just coming back after the class, and you feel better physically and you went for that, you feel just calmer in general, more clarity. So going back to what you're saying there, yes, you're obviously, Chris, you're dealing with guys all day that are doing this repetitive skill, but they all do it individually differently. So you're really highly attuned to looking at that, and that's awareness in itself. So then if we go back to, say, the average coach, if they don't get the information from a parent, then obviously there's a huge amount of information there in what we said in the last few minutes, with OCD, with ADHD, with dyslexia and so on. So obviously they're looking around for, for everything. They can't see everything. But that's where awareness comes in, and awareness will come in with regard to, experience. And that's what education does, doesn't it? Once we learn something, we're always looking out for it. We won't all find it right now, but over time we might spot something.
Look, I got a question going back to the yoga thing, because you, yes, all my long snappers, like I've said before, you guys should definitely do yoga. Sam's told me to do yoga. She tells me to. I haven't done it yet. I obviously, if you guys see me stretching wise, I would love to do it. I need to do it. But the way you said it, how it clears your mind, I think that's something I kind of want to dive into a little bit until we get some more questions up here, is how as a parent, as a long snapper, can a kid learn to be in the moment and not get overstressed? Because like we said before, long snapping is such an interesting, or any athletic sport is just an interesting position of, what you got to do, because it's so one thing. And I always, like I've said before, I think it's the hardest position, because everyone, the play starts with you. You'll never have a game-winning kick without a game-winning snap, is my thing I always say. And everyone is on you, and it's just such a finite movement. It's not like a lot of stuff can happen if Riggs snaps the ball and he moves this hand, it's gone. I mean, it's not coming back. It's not like you're running and you take a wrong step. You may fall, okay, but it's not going to screw up the entire play. So how do you get a kid to learn to just chill out? Or how does a parent get a kid to learn to chill out and relax?
Well, it's a trade-off, isn't it? Like, one of the things I use definitely myself is the likes of yoga, and it can be done online. It can be done through the screen like this. I do yoga therapy as well, where you tune it to one person's particular needs. So for example, if they have a physical thing going on, they can, like, say, inflexibility of the hamstrings or whatever, that can also be tuned and related to some part of your mind, such as calmness and so on. So you can actually kill two birds with one stone if you're designing a class for a person who has, as I say, physically presents with tight hamstrings, for example. So you might just do a 15-minute class rather than them, telling them to go down to your local yoga place for 1 hour, when in fact they're only getting like 3 minutes out of that helps the hamstrings or whatever. So rather than that, just get attuned to it with a private person that way. But you kind of, in the way to answer that, I suppose, learning is the thing. The beautiful thing is you guys are all young. So like anything, it's a set of habits. Fortunately, right now in the world, not just with COVID, but in general, the world is moving so fast, and all the information that we intake on a daily basis. And we spoke about this briefly last week with regard to social media. It's so fast. But anybody that's here now, or certainly any parent that's on the call, will definitely relate to this. Where if a child is obviously, or a young snapper here is obviously under 20 years of age, the internet just started right before you guys were born. So you guys have come in and you're super intelligent to be able to adapt to all the different technologies that are out there. But your parents, and myself included, and I know Chris, you'll relate to this as well when you're school teaching, that we used to probably tell the students that, hey guys, you've got a project to do. But guess what? When they start giving out about it, they start going, hey, basically, I had no library. I just had a library. I had no Google. I had nothing online to go to. You guys, though, although you can adapt to it, and you have adapted to it at 3, 4, 5 years of age, and being super digital nomads, as you call you guys right now, there's still an over processing going on in the brain, right? So day to day, week to week, month to month, it all adds up. And that goes with stress, as Chris has just said. This is the pressure that we're feeling. So if you can stop that, like a good parent will obviously notice that. Will notice when you're getting a little bit stressed, if exams are coming up or something like that, screen time, just zero it out. If you've got a game coming up on a Saturday, just pull back. For example, I was talking to a guy recently. Unfortunately, over here, we've got, big games on still with Christmas coming along, and even after Christmas. And they had examinations, college examinations going on just before their last game, and assignments. And one thing, for example, is they had to drive to the game themselves with COVID, obviously. So they had to drive, I think the game was around 7:30 in the evening. So they had to drive about 2 hours. And obviously a young driver, you want to be careful and so on. It's winter. So you're allowing yourself time. Driving is hugely stressful. Anybody that's driven or done anything long. So you have to look at it from the game's point of view. If the game's at 7:30, you have 2 hours before the game where you're driving. Then before that, I was asking the person, what did you do before that? Because this person didn't really have their best game. In fact, I thought they were very slow. When I say slow, I'm not talking about physically. I thought reactivity up here in their mind was very, very slow. And of course, with snapping, you can't be slow. You've got to be right there. It's got to happen. It's a split-second thing. So rewinding back from 7:30, the 2 hours to drive, that's very, very stressful. That's going to, what I said to them was, look at it like a battery. Look at your brain like a battery. You charge your battery in your phone in the morning, you want it to last the whole evening. It's the exact same thing for your 7:30 game in the evening. You have to rewind back now and look at it from that point of view. If you want to be sharp at 7:30, the driving for that particular guy was very, very stressful for 2 hours. Then before that, he was at home. Obviously, he got something to eat. That's a pretty chilled out time. It's not too bad a thing to be doing. It's actually a good thing to be just messing around the kitchen without any stress, obviously. But before that, from like 2 o'clock, 2 p.m., 3 p.m., back to 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. in the morning, he was doing college assignments. So the stress of actually meeting a deadline is a stress. We all know that in our heads, I have a deadline. That's going to elicit a kind of, I need to do this right now kind of thing. Secondly, though, the screen. So the screen is a double stress in the moment. And if you add like 5 hours to that, that's hugely stressful on your brain. Your brain, the battery that I spoke about before, is going to really wear down in those 5 hours. So you might feel it, but when you hop in the car, that's another couple hours stress. Obviously, team talk. and then we're getting up to getting our emotions up for this game and whatever, we're feeling natural emotions. We go out and play the game. The game is going to go rapid, fast, reaction. It's the exact same with you guys. So you need to de-stress all of that, get rid of the lights and the screens. So if we're looking at screen time, spoke about social media last week, even the light on your screen, on your phone or on your laptop or whatever, after, I would say if your bedtime is usually say 10:30, I would say 9:30 at the very, very latest, you look at a screen, even the night before a game. Not to mention.
Okay, so hold on. You're I'm drinking from a fire hose here.
Yeah.
So you're saying, okay, because I'm trying to write the steps down too. Limiting screen time can really help reduce stress before a big game. But you're saying literally, so Blake Gorski up in Seattle, Washington has a game on Friday night. You're saying his normal bedtime, say Thursday, he goes to bed, he talks to his lady, he goes to bed at say 11 p.m. So you're saying by 10 p.m., dude is off his phone.
At the latest.
At the latest. And then okay, he wakes up, he checks Twitter, make sure he checks my quote of the day. No.
Even momentarily. Yeah, even momentarily. Let's say you go to bed at 10. I'm a good person here, and I stop my electronics or whatever, and I go to bed, and I'm all chilled out. 11, read a book or whatever. And for some reason, I get up at 2 a.m. to go to the toilet. I come back in, I just check something, maybe an email was coming through. That split second, that light is going in, and that light for your brain mimics the morning light. So it thinks straight away, your brain goes, oh, the morning's here. Great, it's chirpy, it's the sun is shining away, wonderful. And then your body becomes restless. So, okay, you might fall asleep, but over time, it's not good. And this messes with your, it's a very tricky thing to say, but basically your cardiology, your rhythm of your heart. And this is why we start looking at now, we don't know it at the moment, but it definitely changes. And they've done lots of tests on this, sleep tests and so on, sleep apneas and all these different things. And we know cancers are becoming more prevalent in the world right now, and stresses like strokes and stuff like that. Of course, strokes are just essentially very related to your brain and your heart because they're all related, right? So there's like a tributary of an alleyway as such going from the heart to the head. So all these technologies, they have their place, but even the light, not to mention as we all know, with the internet itself and the 5G and all that, that's questions around that. And not just to mention the radiation, the actual light from the screen, we have to be very, very careful of how we time it, especially when we're looking at games, because games are going to have huge pressure in themselves.
So, what about, back to Gorski in Seattle, it's game day now. It's Friday, he wakes up, he's ready to roll. Are you saying like that dude should not be on his phone at all day? Or when say his game's at 7 p.m.? When should he like say I'm done? I mean,
give yourself 2 or 3 hours before the game. Remember though, that's the middle of the day, then that's going to be back at about 4. That's okay. That's fine. Now, obviously, psychologically, if you start looking at tweets that you're not going to play well and all these kind of stuff, you don't want to be looking at that anyway. That's for sure. But if you're just checking like a message from your family member or something, or a good friend, that's cool. 2 or 3 hours is fine, absolutely. But what I am saying is, if you're on it for 3 hours during the day in the morning of that game, that's going to wear things down. Now, there's also questions over the fact that you're looking at a smaller screen, because your eyes are doing things that they shouldn't naturally be doing. You're concentrating on something in a very condensed manner. If you watch a person who has glasses that are, older, 50, 60, 70 years of age, if they don't have their reading glasses, what they do, they'll take something up closer to view it. So your eyes are doing different things if you're pulling it back, pushing it forward, that kind of things. That, and again, is stressing you. We're not, if we look back to how we were neurologically born, we're supposed to be outside more. We're supposed to be moving around more. Cavemen didn't have mobile phones. So they, with perfect eyesight, would probably be looking at mobile phones nowadays like this, wondering what the hell is this? We're just attuned to the screen time from, normal television, a movie house, that kind of thing, which is great because it's big enough. But if we look at it on the screen, the small screen and all of that, we have to be very, very wary. Now, long term, we don't know the effects of it for sure. But definitely there's a lot of studies out there saying that there could be effects and stuff like that. But definitely from a battery point of view, day to day, how do I feel, game in the evening, there's no point having it. if it's going to wear you down. What's the point in, eating properly, psychologically preparing yourself right, doing all the practice, and then suddenly you're handicapping yourself in the last few hours before the game?
So 4 hours before game, 2 to 3, 4, right around there. Get off your phone, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So
and then there's another thing as well.
Go ahead.
There's another thing as well, because the phones are designed for us to all to be addicted. Okay. So what they want is, for example, we all know Las Vegas and the slot machines. Okay. If we know this one, I don't know what it's called. You've got the 3 fruits or whatever, it might come up. All right. So you've got the 3 flashing screens on the slot machines. The phones, the Twitters, the Facebooks, all these things are designed so they flick down the screen. So you're scrolling. You're continually scrolling. So when you put down your phone after seeing something online, you're already scrolling. And when you're scrolling, what are you doing? You're looking up a little bit and you're thinking, whoa, I want to see what's next. What's next? What's next? When you're expecting what's next, that builds a natural anxiety in your mind. So then if the coach comes up to you and, you just have to leave down your phone, straight away, like there's this chemical in your brain released because you're excited to see what's next. But then if the coach is saying, okay, we're going to be nice and calm, we prepared nice and calmly, if your mind is racing in behind all, even things the coach is saying and doing and the preparation you've done, the routines you've done before the game might be contradicted because your mind is already on, what's going on there with that next text that could be coming through or video or whatever else. So
Sam, what's that movie that I just saw it on Netflix or something?
Social Dilemma.
That's it. If you guys have not seen that, Doc, I'm assuming you probably directed it.
Exactly. It's a really good one to watch.
If parents and kids, if you have not seen it, Jesus, it's really, I mean, how they have you hooked so bad. I mean, it's.
So people, like you guys are going to laugh. I don't have a smartphone, right? I've never had a smartphone or an iPhone. So again, going back to the word awareness, when I, get out and about and I'm just completely going for a walk or run or cycle, whatever, it's frightening what I see ordinarily because I'm not used to just doing this because I've never done it. So when I have I have a laptop right now, I'm on a laptop, I'm doing the Zoom on the laptop, but a laptop is big and chunky and awkward. It's not as big as chunky and awkward as a desktop, but a laptop, if I want to bring it down the street and go to my friends and, hang out with him, and still I want to check the internet out or whatever, it's just too awkward. But I want to make it awkward on myself. So I just close the laptop and leave it there. Plus, there's information on the laptop that I don't want to break when I'm traveling and stuff. Whereas a smartphone, of course, is very functional. Again, going back to what you're saying there, Rubio, is that they have hooked us. They have hooked us because they want this information to be really, really, fantastically portable. And there's more density and capacity in a smartphone than there is in a laptop. There's more ability and apps capability. So they want us to be mobile because why? Human beings are naturally mobile. Going back to the caveman, we're naturally mobile. We're not meant, and what does a doctor say even 20, 30 years ago when they had limited information? They said, go for a walk. If you've got a bad hip, go for a walk. If you've got a headache, go for a walk, get some fresh air. Because it's just mobilizing. And then the brain starts doing different things. We start de-stressing. This is why obviously basic exercise is very good for us. But they're trying to hook us even when we're doing that. And we're falling for it.
So got a great question. That if you guys, just to reiterate what the doc said, if you have not seen The Social Dilemma, you got to watch it. Yeah. It'll blow your mind. What are your thoughts on meditation or using a device before bed or before a game?
So I'll take the back end of that first. The back end of that, is the back end of that a meditation device or something like from an iPod? Yeah. Or?
Hold on, Ken, can you speak right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of these wellness apps that you can, download and do these wellness plans or meditation, like, Calm, I think, is a big meditation app, and I don't know, does that kind of violate I'm doing quotes, but violate the, no phone before bed, and whether that still is use of a phone and still, will kind of throw off your circadian rhythm when you're trying
Yeah.
to sleep or something, and then, or before a game or something like that, because it seems like short of, the other option is to learn a meditation technique that you do, kind of not on an electronic device, right? So you would learn it and then do it before bed or before a game or something like that.
Yeah, and you made some brilliant points there within that too, Ken. So yes, I mean, Calm is fantastic. It's fantastic resources on it, no doubt. But the way it's actually delivered through an app, the fact that you have to access a mobile device or even a laptop or whatever, again, that's essentially breaking that kind of routine of being calm, as you guys call it, before bedtime. I mean, the reality is we need to have a bedtime routine. It's going back to the world and technology. Technology is a wonderful thing in general. It's designed for us as human beings, by us as human beings, to generally make things better. However, there's huge marketing behind all of this. There's huge competition, as there is in any business. And if we look at the world right now, for example, what could we do? Obviously, with the chicken and the egg, COVID-19, lockdown, March, April, May this year, where we would quite honestly be on our own, a lot of us in the world, without having some sort of technology to communicate with people. However, the fact of the matter is, our human brains have not evolved. Our human brains have evolved in certain regards, but they haven't evolved in such a way in general that it's going to look after the technology that has frighteningly improved in the last 20 years or so, and will ever improve. So to answer your question, ideally, no, I wouldn't be using those apps, certainly not before bedtime. No, definitely not. With regard to, I personally, I would go back to the 2-3 hours thing before a game as well. But you made a very, very excellent point there, Ken, as well, I think, where the other option is to learn it. That's the beautiful thing. If you can learn off those things, and that goes back to your earlier question as well, Chris, that you said about pressurized in the moment and stuff. You can always use those things in the moment of pressure in a game, because you can't go to the sideline the game and grab your app and pop it on for 5 minutes. You got to be out there. So whatever you learned prior to going out in the game, the big pressure time of a game, that's when you're going to utilize it. So if we think of the best coaches, the best managers, one of the things probably that these guys have in abundance in general, more so than any others, is that they can make switches on a field of play very quickly, or they can see something that's happening in a player's that's unlike a player, for example. So they can take one player off, put a substitute, whatever. They can notice things in real time. Go back to time. You're talking about back to neurological issues like ADHD. These are the things that are happening to us. We're beginning to lose our concentration and our focus through these apps that are draining our batteries.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that's a great point, because I think, if you don't learn the meditation techniques, then you can't implement them whenever you need to implement them, right? Because then you're going to fall back on, I need to go back to my app to go through this process step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if you learn it, then you could start with step 2, step 4, or whatever, whenever you need it.
And that, to your point, you don't have to consciously learn meditation. If you're doing it and you're in the meditative state, then it will be feeding your subconscious. So therefore, when the pressure or the nervousness kicks in, it's like a secondary device within your brain that just trip switches and takes over.
Well, this is, guys, I'm hoping that some of you are having an epiphany right here, because this is exactly what I tell you guys all the time when we do slow motion drills. Like, one of the things we always do is, none of these guys are standing right now. They get up in a snapping motion and they do a nice slow motion drill. They just do it the exact same, like say I'm throwing a pass, but they would do it like this. And so I have them do it over and over and over and over again. So, and I always say, when all hell breaks loose, your body's going to go back. It's going to revert back to just the basics. You always go back to the basics. And that's why you just do those. So when all hell breaks loose, your body just takes over. It's no longer your mind, it's your body takes over. And I always reference back to like baseball players. You can get a Major League Baseball player, what's the drill they do every single day? They hit off a damn tee. I mean, I'm teaching you can teach a 5-year-old how to play baseball. What's the first thing you do? You teach them how to hit off a tee. It's the exact same thing. So you're basically just reiterating, and I was basically a doctor in saying what I was saying.
Well, yeah, but just as you're saying, if you do that again, Chris, when you're throwing the ball, it's the exact same thing. When the nervousness kicks in for other players, like a big game, Super Bowl, you go out there, everybody's going to be nervous in some regard. There is nobody there that, okay, they might have played there a few times, but it's a brand new time. There's, billions of people in the world looking at you. It's prime time. Nobody wants to mess up. So if you've done your work prior to this, and like Ken just said, if there's that momentary addition coming from your brain that's already been wired, you'll actually begin to see things a little bit slower. And it only takes a split second to see it slower to be able to be a split second ahead of other people. And that's what you want as a snapper.
Well, and exactly. That's the way it was. Because I remember I've told the story before. My first full game that I played in, I remember I snapped the ball and I had to snap and block left or right. And I remember everything, it was like a fast, like a video game, like Tron, everything was going on. I was like, holy Jesus, what's happening here? Everything is so fast. And then I remember by the time I was a senior, I would snap. And like you said, everything was slow, like to the point where I'd say, should I get that guy? What about this guy? No, I'll take this guy. And it's just one of those things that you've done it a billion times, but it was the comfortability of it. I don't know if that's the right word, where it was just basically reiterating that, everything was fast and everything was very, very slow. And the better these kids get at their snapping or whatever sport their son or daughter's in right now, it becomes just easy. It's so much easier. You're relaxed. And it does, like you said, it really slows down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's not to think you're going to be a Forrest Gump and be slower or brain dead as such. It means that you're actually just going to be able to, the way I describe that in one way is that if we think of, again, a movie house or a big screen or cinema, whatever, that when we're up the front seat, we're looking left and right, and it's so big, like even a big ass television, that it's fantastic. We've got popcorn. It's just going to completely overtake us. We want to be lost in this brand new movie. So we're giving our money to be lost, and we just want to forget our thoughts, go in and just be overtaken by the sound, by the graphics and so on. But if we go and we just sat up the back or went home and got an old style TV, like 14 inches or something, well, then we're going to see around the television. We're going to have space between ourselves and the movie screen. We're going to see the tops of people's heads. We're going to notice more things. That's what awareness is. We're still seeing the screen. We can still be able to talk to a friend afterwards about what happened. And if we say the same thing for a game, we'll still be able to see the game. We're just having more options. So it's like a player who has, for example, I was watching something last night. I think it was the Giants were playing or something. I saw a brief clip last night. I think it was the quarterback. Instead of throwing the ball, he decided to just take an alleyway and off he went. So he made about 7 or 8 yards or whatever. So he saw something. He had that split second reaction rather than throwing, I'm just going to change my movement here and go forward here. So the whole game changed around it. But if you're slightly slower, you're not going to make the tackle. And you're going to have a horrible game because of that or whatever. So we're talking in milliseconds here.
Okay, so let's come back to you guys. Ben Froelich, I think you were on last time. You guys should be able to answer this question here. Jack Riggs has a question. After a bad snap, any way to help a deep snapper learn to have a short memory, such as when a quarterback gets burned by a wide receiver so that one bad snap does not turn into a second one? I told you guys last week what show to watch. Ted Lasso. Okay, phenomenal on Apple Plus. Hopefully you've all seen it. If you haven't, you need to. It's about American football coach moving across the pond, coaching a soccer premier league, and all that good stuff. Anyway, he says, Ben, I'm going to call on you because you're focused right now with your glasses. Do you remember what animal's the happiest?
It's a goldfish because they have a life, like their memory is like 10 seconds.
Perfect. Very good memory. There you go. Okay. So yeah, basically the coach says it'd be like a goldfish. They're the happiest in the world because they only have a 10-second memory. And Doc, I remember, because I actually talked to my wife and kids about this, how you said, and I'm going to screw this up, But if you have like a bad snap, you can immediately adjust your mind where you're like, and then that just flips it to like, no, you're not an idiot. You actually did well. And so it just shoots the neurons or brain on. I don't know what the hell's going on up there, but you know what I'm saying. So you do the doc version of that.
Yeah. So I think last week we were talking about this, basically that you can, okay, if you obviously do a bad snap, let's say halftime comes, and thankfully you've got a coach that come over and you clear it up psychologically, and they say, hey, look, don't worry about it. We know in practice 99 times out of 100 you're fantastic. You'll go out and you'll do the same wonderful thing in the second half, and you feel differently now because of it. Okay, that's essentially a way of providing therapy for somebody essentially in the moment. You know, a lot of talk therapies, for example, are based off counseling, things like that. But obviously, if you're in the game for a moment, you don't have that luxury of being able to go over to a coach or just get those things, that those people that can kind of reiterate how good you were for you to forget about it. But even if you had, I mean, visually it can be extremely traumatizing if something went really, really bad. And you said, Chris, last week with regard to some guy that snapped and it just went all over the place. He kept chucking the ball and it was like all over the place. So if you have a nightmare, if you're having that nightmare, you have to stop. When is like stopping in a game and being able to do it momentarily? If you can do it momentarily in a game, you can certainly do it after the game, before next week's game. You have loads of time. You have 7 days to get your head around things, to go back and practice. So what do we do usually between game to game, week to week? We usually just, get out there and just start practicing again, just for 5 minutes, just to get it out of your head. Because that's it. You get it out of your head when you do the same actions that you know are positive, that you know when there's nobody looking, that you can do, that you've done since you were 10 years of age or whatever. Even the top pros will do that. If they have a bad game. But in the game, you don't have that luxury. You can't talk to a coach. So you need to realize, and this is the most important part of it, and I didn't say it last week really, is that you can actually change how your brain feels through your thoughts momentarily. So you can actually, if we think something, we can actually change how our whole body will react to the very next or similar experience, such as when you have to step up and do that snap. So rather than starting thinking about, oh God, 5 minutes ago, I did this and the ball went there and the whole game disrupted, and there was a touchdown and so on. That's the moment when most people think, I wish the ground would just open up and swallow me kind of moment. But you can turn that into the most advantageous thing, because here's the thing. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody in the world makes mistakes. The top players make mistakes. But it's how you react to the mistakes. And especially at you guys at your age, this is what recruiters, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris, but this is what these guys will be looking at. They'll be looking at,
100%. The 100%. The one of the you guys have heard the story before. One of my top long snappers in 2014, Tanner Carew, was at University of Oregon during their junior day or junior camp, special teams camp during the summer. And he was the number one kid. Everyone was watching him. He was fine. All the coaches were there, which they normally weren't, but they were acting like they weren't paying attention with their little sunglasses, having a good time. And then all of a sudden, mid-afternoon, he launches one. I mean, 50-yard snap. It was an amazing snap. It was just for someone 19 foot tall, And so immediately he comes back. They circle around him, and I just tell him, snap the next one as physically hard as you can. And boom, it was perfect. He had a full scholarship within 30 minutes. And like the coaches were saying to me after, we know he's going to mess up. It's going to happen. We want to see, does he continue to have the wheels come off, or does he just stop the car, put the wheels back on, buckle up, let's go? And that's what he said. The coaches, I've heard that from several coaches, is that we know they're going to screw up. That's a given. It's going to happen in 5 years. It never happened to me, but it's going to happen to the average. They want to see exactly how do you react to said screw up, and that's to them is more telling of anything. How do you react? Are you one of those kids that starts dropping F-bombs? You're kicking the dirt, or is it just, Jesus, it happened. Let's go, move on. The milk spilt. Now let me wipe it up with a bounty paper towel. Let's go.
Absolutely. And look, a contract, if we look at the most hopeful area here, we'll say a pro football contract. A contract is not over 1 year. It's over a couple of years. So things, you have a lot of games. It's going to happen. College, 3-4 years, whatever. It's, again, there's going to be players as good as you, talent-wise. Let's face it. but it's how, the difference is how you manage things when they come up, and pressurized situation, nervousness, and so on. None of us can tell, even, Chris can go out with all the plans, tactics in the world, but we never know which moment of the game you're going to get your first snap, or your 8th snap, or your 10th snap. We don't know how, or the context, or the pressure, or the score of the game when those things happen. So when I mentioned the word manage, that word manage is to do with, obviously, having your good parents, going to bed on time, getting your nutrition, and managing your mind. And the beautiful thing is, anything you do now in the next couple of years through the likes of football will always benefit you in other aspects of life. Always. There's so many people out there that are entering into the workforce, for example, in 2021, and they'll have never played sport. And this particular year, COVID-19, they probably wouldn't have met more than 2 or 3 people, as most of us haven't. But if you have experience of working with people, being in a team, those things are going to bring yourself forward. This is what employers are looking for. The fact that you have leadership capabilities. And that's another word, capability. They don't expect you to be perfect, but they expect you to have the ability to be able to be molded by them, by their company ethos. And it's the same with an organization. These organizations are companies. They have a brand. They want you to represent stronger values in a human being, which essentially is good character, which goes back to Chris's point, is managing when things go wrong, because life, gives you lemons. What do you do with it?
Make a slushy. Okay, so we got 2 questions here. What about having a bad day of practice? Where is the line of being able to turn around a bad day versus realizing that you're not helping yourself by continuing? I'll start with this one. Is that for Alex? I've actually had this happen several times to snappers. Several times it happened with Christian Yount. He was my number 1 for 2006. He ended up going to UCLA, finest school in the land. Was a Playboy All-American, played for the Browns for like 8 or 9 years. He was great. He played for the Patriots for a little bit. There was several times when I was doing private lessons with him that you say we had a 2-hour session, and after 40 minutes, you could just see he just didn't have it. And that's okay. And so what I would do is immediately remove the ball. And what we would do is we'd work footwork. We'd work release. We'd work blocking. I'd work some other aspect other than snapping the ball, because you could just tell he was a smart kid. So like we've been saying, the wheels were coming off, and it wasn't worth me trying to get a round peg into a square hole. It was one of those, let's just call this a day. It's okay. The world will not end. No one had a gun to our head. And it was, let's just work on other things regarding snapping. So I would say usually within the first half hour, Alex, you can tell whether or not you've got it. And it's okay. I mean, if you don't have it like 8 days in a row, then we've got a problem. But if it's like 1 day a month, no big deal. It happens. It's just one of those things. And I don't know if there's a brain reason for it, or is he just in a funk 1 day a month? Maybe it's what's the barometric pressure? I don't know. Doc, is there a scientific reason?
I heard most of that answer, but I didn't really, it kind of cut out there, just the question. What's the general question? Sorry, again.
It's on the notes over there from Alex. It says, what about just having a bad day of practice?
Okay,
Where is
yeah.
the line of being able to turn around a bad day versus realizing that you're not helping yourself by continuing? My thought is, anytime you start to get angry at yourself, that's it.
Exactly.
Cut it. Just cut it.
And to your point, you're exactly right? To your point, the anger part is natural. Okay, if we look at people that are called perfectionists, or people that want to get really, really, really good at something, be professionals. We mentioned OCD. They can get this OCD, which is just a compulsive disorder. It's not good to be doing things so concurrently and so regularly, especially if it annoys other parts of your life or the people in them. So absolutely, 1 day a month, or some days you're just not at it. I mean, if you look at other sports like golf, even Tiger Woods, even when he was in his pomp, 10, 15 years ago, he didn't win every tournament. And this guy prepared for every tournament. Jack Nicklaus, the same way. So, these are games where individually, which is very similar to long snapping, because obviously it's an individual thing. So you have to be on your money all of the time, or most of the time. But at the end of the day, it's back to what you were saying there. Now, which is, if you're in a funk, you need strategies to get out of it. And we mentioned a couple of them. But if you do not accept it, you have to have that acceptance too, that you are only human. Then the anger comes in. And here's the thing. When the anger kicks in, it comes from a part of the brain that's really, really ancient. So it's like fight or flight. So again, if you're a caveman and you're protecting your cave, you're going to get angry. You're going to get, a stick or a staff or a stone or something, and you're going to fight off the intruder. There's simply, there's no technology there. There's no alarms or cameras to help you to be intelligent rather than actually preempt or predict that you're going to get angry. But the reality is you will get angry at some stage. When that happens, it intercepts another part of your brain, which is the logical reasoning part of your brain. So it stops you from actually, we mentioned the word calm, to calmly sit down and go, well, what would I do when such and such happens? Now we can theorize right now. We can go, well, if I was in the 5th minute or the last minute of a game and it's, dead level, dead heat, it's the final. And if I have to snap, how would I go about doing it? And all of us here, 100% of us would say the same thing. We will do it calmly. We will go to our practice. We'll go to our routine and so on. If we have superstitions that work, I don't care. Just do them. I don't care if it's wearing, your cleats, taking your cleats off for a moment. I don't care. Whatever it is, just get over the line and do it. But when the anger kicks in, if a player's been pushed, if you've been pushed a minute beforehand, opponents will do this. They'll do this to ruffle your feathers, to change your mindset. And it does change. It does change, but if you accept that it will change, that it's going to change, or more than likely it will change, then you're sooner going to get that moment where you can kind of go back into that calmness. Because there's different parts of your brains, and there's this kind of electrical impulses going around like bing, bing, bing. It's like a laser, it's so fast that if your anger has been motivated, then you're in full flow of anger. It's very difficult. That's why, we've often heard, take 10 breaths, walk away. The problem is, you can't tell somebody to take 10 breaths if they're already angry, because you're telling them that's an order. So they don't want an order. Who wants an order if they're angry? So it's not going to work. They're not going to get to the 10 breaths because you're ordering them in the first place and they're angry. But if you accept it right now and you realize, hey, there are different parts of the brain straight away, therefore, when it does happen, time will pass and it will ease. But if you start thinking, I'm a bull, I love this anger, and you feel all that energy of anger, then you're motivating yourself and you're continuing it and you're deepening the anger. Of course, that's when stupid things happen, like, we hit somebody on the field, or, the ref comes in and whatever, and then we let our team down totally. And oddly, it feels really good because we feel alive. When, anger is a powerful emotion. So is passion. So is winning. These are powerful emotions that are coming from an ancient part of our brain, but essentially they're no good to a team who has calmly practiced their routine and they know their plays. So there's no place for them. But if we accept them, that they will come at different times, then we're doing ourselves and our team a favor when that moment of nervousness and moments of pressure arrive.
That was a good one. There was a lot. I'm trying to write down some of the key points over here on the sides. Hopefully you guys can see them. We're getting really close to an hour here already. Let's end on this one, Doc. What are your thoughts on exercise technology such as Peloton and similar programs? Technology overload, or better to exercise with others at a gym or running with others? Obviously, Rona restrictions withstanding.
Yeah, I'm not familiar, Ken, with that particular one, Peloton.
It's the bike, like an exercise bike, but it's got a screen.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I presume that's the one with the screen. Oh yeah, that Peloton. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar a little bit with that. And you've got treadmills that have great, technologies in them and all that. Bottom line is, I mean, I've run marathon distances myself without any technologies, because remember, I've never had a screen in front of my face where I'm, mobile, even when I'm walking. I've never done the earphone thing. Okay, I did when I was like 12, 13, when we had Walkmans and stuff. These were, I'm not even going to explain those things, guys. These were really, really, really old fashioned. But anyway, the technology nowadays is far more sophisticated. Bottom line is, if for me and from my experience, for example, the first time I tried to do like a marathon pace on my own, I did it. And I thought, what am I going to do? Like for, the natural thoughts are, what am I going to do? I'm overthinking it here. What am I going to do for like all those hours that I'm out there and I'm, just like I'm moving, but what am I going to think about? And I thought, oh, you know what? I can think about planning for this trip, or planning for what I'm going to say then, or whatever. The reality is the hours pass and I didn't think about anything. And that's the honest truth. The only thing I thought about, which is the most important thing, whether you're doing a Peloton or whether you're doing, any type of intense exercise, is your breath and your breathing, to keep that rhythm, to keep the rhythm that you've already learned going. And something like, Peloton, especially for, cycling or for running, generally we're not sprinting, so we're going slower. Therefore, once we get the rhythm, we can just go like a snail and we'll get there. We'll survive. We might make the exact time, but we'll survive and we'll get there and we'll learn from it. But if you start putting,
real quick, and Ken has the benefit where, like myself, I would not. Doc, you would not. Sam in Wisconsin, you would not. Ken lives in California, Southern California, so he's got 75 degrees year round. So, like, if he wants to go for a jog, he can go for a jog. Sam's in Idaho. I'm not going to chase down a bear in December because it's so cold. It's one of those things. So, would you say, just to move things here, if he has the option to go outside and take a run and it's 80 degrees and a slight offshore breeze, should he do that, or should he stay on the bike?
Well, obviously there are two different exercises. I mean, it depends on whichever one he wants. But I mean, look, 80 degrees. Look, the hotter it's getting, obviously there's the heat, there's all those other factors coming into it as well, isn't there? But from a mentality point of view of, I want to have less mental stress and I run and I exercise because of this, you can just take it from that point of view, that definitely, I mean, even the likes of, there's some fantastic things out there, for example, for marathon runners of that, where they'll, if your time is 3 hours or 350 or whatever it is, they'll have particular podcasts that are 350 long. That's fantastic. And they'll guide you through. But the reality is, if you're running or if you're racing or if you're competing, to be true to it, you don't have those gadgets when you're there. Marathon, for example, comes from when the guy ran from one town to the next in a panic because he needed to get help, and it ended up being like 26.4 miles or whatever it is. So the guy dropped dead, I think, at the end of it. That's why they call it the marathon after that. So yeah, it goes back. Your face there tells the story there, Chris.
Yeah, that's reason 500. I'm not going to run a marathon. No,
well, so,
go ahead.
It's just back to, keep things simple. I mean, at the end of the day, a Super Bowl this year is a Super Bowl, 30 years ago. There's still millions of people watching. There's still going to be that sense of, I want to do my best. I want to get out there. At the end of the day, and I'm not downing technology, other than that, we wouldn't be able to talk right here. But there's a time and there's a place for it. And none of the companies are expecting you to take these things right before a game or whatever. Yes, there are obviously companies that are going out there and selling podcasts that are perfect for this before a game and all that. But at the end of the day, they're mass production, aren't they? The mass production is just about making money easier. If you can have a person in your ear, if you think of that worst point in a game, and again, that's that positive coach's voice, you're doing well. Go back to what you said, Chris, there at the start. Those 2 words that you said. If these are the instructions, the base instructions, if that's all you can do with them, just keep hearing that 1 or 2 words. That's fantastic. So you don't need all these gadgets to be kind of interrupting your flow within yourself.
And to wrap up, this brings up a very big thing. Like we were saying when I was talking to Big Ben about how following through. Every long snapper, and I tell all my guys this, you usually have at least, I always say, they're like an 18-wheeler going down the highway delivering something. If you've ever seen an 18-wheeler blow a tire, it can still move. 2 wheels still moves. 3 wheels, it's still moving, just not that great. So like my 5-star, 6-star guys that are the studs, they usually have all 18 wheels moving. The kids that are like 4.5, they're almost there. They may have one wheel blown, maybe two tires blown, things like that. Still moving, just we need to fine tune it. So every long snapper always has at least one thing that'd be like if you had 18 wheels pretty much moving, or 17 and a half, we'll say, that they need to tell themselves before the snap. Like mine, I would get down, I knew my form was fine, and I would always tell myself, snap it as hard as you can. Just in my mind, snap it as hard as you can. The kid that I was talking about before, Christian Yount, he literally wrote it on his cleat every single, you can't see my hand, he wrote it on his cleat right on his left toe, because he said for some reason he always looked out at his left toe right before he snapped. So he literally wrote snap hard on his, because that was his thing. Not everyone's going to be snap hard. I mean, Christian even, I think he was talking at one point because he snapped so much at the beach, he was going to get it tattooed on his foot. You don't need to do that, guys. But it was one of those that some kids, you might need to be follow through. Some people might need to say, you know, sit back down, lean back, get your eyes through. There's a billion things that can all, you know, work on at the same exact thing. So not everyone's going to have that thing, but just to reiterate what the doc's saying, yeah, you should have at least one thing that, you know, if it's follow through for Big Ben, or if it's lean back for Alex, you things like that. It's gonna, that's your podcast in your head. That's your final podcast. That's your technology of, okay, this is what I need to say, you know, to make it happen. And that it was one of those that when I said to myself, snap the ball hard, it was like, now I'm ready. Oh, let's go.
And just to complement exactly what you're saying there, that player was looking at his, as you say, at his toe for some reason, like you say, but he was aware when he was doing that, even in a big game, that he was looking at his toe. That's going back to what I was saying before, when you become aware of these things. And again, education, even today, we're talking about being aware of it. I know it's a lot of information, but being aware of it, even one little bit that comes here, it will click sometime in your mind, be it as a parent, a coach, or a player. Aha, that's the aha moment. That's how you know, and you're way more aware than somebody else who has not had that education in the first place, or that knowledge in the first place. So, but on the other side of the coin is, if you go out and you do nothing and you don't think about your game and you don't prepare and all of that, you'll keep making the same mistakes. You won't get any better.
Doc, this was fantastic. I love these things. I swear to God, I think I do these more for me. They're so interesting to me. I feel like I'm learning. Hopefully, I'm trying to write down some stuff. Hopefully, you guys all enjoyed it as well. Give everyone a virtual clap for Doc from Ireland. You did a great job as always, man. You were phenomenal. I really appreciate it. Next week, we might do another one. I'll talk to the Doc a little bit more about this. And Doc, can they still email you questions if they have any, or things like that? Or
yeah, they can, absolutely. I'm going to put my email again. Everybody has a complimentary half-hour consultation with me. It's only fair. We did it last week as well. I'm going to put my email here on the chat, and there you go. So first come, first served, guys, as well. I think there's one or two more this week than last, so just be aware of that. So we can do it on Zoom in the same regard. And it's, look, everything we've spoken about today, there might be only one split second or one split thing that's, you know, really beneficial, and if there is, I'm delighted. It mightn't be anything we've spoken about today. Everybody, though, is an individual, so an individual conversation really is what's needed. It's completely confidential, obviously.
Perfect. All right, everybody, have a Merry Christmas. Doc, stay warm out there. Everyone have a great time.
Have a fantastic Christmas, guys. Thank you so much.